Okay. So Vote by Design, as I started to say, was written by a person who is on the faculty at Stanford University. So I I was really impressed with it because when I went through the process the first time with her as the instructor, I made a different choice of when I looked at the video clips that we have to than I actually voted for in that particular election. So that said to me that the process of thinking first about what's really important to me as an individual and really understanding what the job description is for a person in that office is really something important. So this is our website. Again, Susan, this is mostly for you, but it's good for everybody. There are 3 pages, and one of those pages is for youth, young people, one is for educators and communities, and one is for the League of Women Voters. On the League of Women Voters page, if you forget what we did today, you can click on that and go all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see some how-tos. And the steps to starting up of making a presentation are right there. So that's a reference for you. There are plenty of other things on that page too, but that's the one that is knowing about today. But we're going to go to the educators and community groups page, which we've done for the others, the lessons that we've shown. And when you scroll down, you'll see that there are 2 suites of programs. One is Fighting for the Vote, which reflects the lead goal of empowering voters, and one is Fighting for Change, which reflects the lead goal of defending democracy. And we're going to use Module 3 today, and then also the Student Voting Advocate Toolkit. But Module 3 is Vote by Design. There's always a brief description of what the lesson includes. There is a video of whatever the last training session was, and then it says View Modules, and that's where you will find the lesson. In this one, you can see that there are a number of extra materials here, and mostly those are things for the teacher or the presenter to use. The questionnaire that's here is for when you do this in person. I recommend printing that rather than using it on the screen. And I recommend printing, I'll show it to you enlarged, the qualities that you value in a leader on one side of the page. And then this is the second Jamboard that you and I will use today, or the poll that we'll use today. And so I recommend that you print this on the back. So you'll have one sheet of paper that the kids can flip back and forth while they're watching videos. In person, you're going to be able to, you'll be opening tabs, and I'll show it to you when we get to it, but if you leave both tabs open, you'll be able to flip back and forth. So you can see what you put down as your important characteristics, and you can see the questions that you're going to have to be answering. So that's that one. In order to get to the different kinds of elections, there is a special folder just with that in it. All right. And when you open it up, you can see that there are all different kinds of elections. Now, we also have one on the primary elections, which I only use in like April, May, and June, because that's not important when you're trying to help people make decisions at a regular election time. But every one of those are set for the kind of candidates that exist. We're going to go to presidential. And Susan, this again is for you. In every case, when we have a lesson, except for the Student Advocate Toolkit, which will be the second part of today, there is a script that you can actually use word by word if you need to, like when you're first starting out. You can have this in front of you and it tells you what to say when you look at the slides. I'm going to wait for the script to come up too. And then in the film strip at the left, you can hide or unhide certain slides by right-clicking on it and then going down to unskip or skip the slide. Now, I'm going to show you these because This talks about the intellectual property rights. Like basically it says, if you copy it, that's fine. If you try to sell it, that's not fine. Things you have to make sure that you're nonpartisan and issue agnostic, all of those things that are part of the core values that we hold. The next couple of slides give you instructions on how to use the fun stuff that's in these presentations if you do them remotely. If you do them in person, there are better ways to do it that will really engage the kids. So that's the Jamboards. This is how to use the polls. And then there are notes about the video clips. And one of the things that is important is that you have to make sure that there are two small boxes before you begin to share your screen. One says make audio accessible, and the other one says optimize for video clips. And you need to check both of those boxes. Otherwise, I, for example, today would be able to hear what goes on in those video clips, but you wouldn't be. So that's important. You have to make sure that you do. And the easy thing to do, if you forget that and somebody says, I can't hear it, is just stop sharing, go back, start the share, and then click on those buttons and then begin to share again. It doesn't take more than a half a minute. And then the rest of this shows the actual slides that are in the presentation. This presentation also has had a section added to it. So technically you can stop right here on slide 18. And this asks you, oh, that doesn't need to be there. I can't cut, I'm not going to worry about it. All right. If you have enough time, if you have a block schedule period, you can do the whole thing. But if you've only got 40 or 45 minutes, you need to stop here. And this is the response form that asks kids, what did you used to think and what do you think now? And that's essentially what the form is. In person, I print out the template for the exit tickets. And there are 3 on a page. I cut them apart. I give them to the kids and they write it out in person. But this is a whole separate activity. If I don't get to this, I talk to the teacher about how to find it and I leave it for them to use with the kids because it's really fun. It's really challenging and engaging and it's a really good follow-up. The one other thing that I'm going to say today that I don't think I've said any other day is that we are really trying to increase our presence on Facebook and especially on Instagram right now, because the Instagram is where the kids go. So if you have an Instagram account, would you please follow us? And it's just simply at Energizing Young Voters. You can look it up. It'll bring you to that and then just say follow. There are posts on there that are amazing. And we have young people creating them every 3 days, something like that. There's a new one that talks about voting in a way that is intended to engage young people. So the reason that if you follow it and you post it, somebody else is going to say, oh, my granddaughter should see that, and pass it along. And then the following becomes greater. Okay, so that's it for the slideshow. I need to stop sharing and go back and share again to click those boxes. And that's how long it takes. Okay. There are many elected positions in our government, and we vote for some elected position every single year. But every 4 years, there's an election in which we elect the President of the United States, who will lead us until the next election. So let's take a closer look today at that actual job. You can apply what we learned today to any of other elected positions. You just need to do a little bit of research using reliable resources, not what you hear on your social media feed, to learn what each official has as their job description and what they're responsible to do. So what actually is the job of the US president? Today's experience is about helping you gain a better understanding of exactly what that is and what matters to you personally when thinking about the person you're going to vote for. All right, so this is the first time that we're going to be doing, I can't remember whether it's a poll or a Jamboard. So I'm going to copy the link address. I need to stop sharing. I need to have my chat open, and so do you. So if it's not open, please open it. And then that link will appear in your chat. And if you click on that, you and I will go to the same screen. You can fill that out with your own personal responses. And then we can see overall by a graph, not what you individually said, but what the majority of us said, or how that how those opinions were distributed. When I'm in person, I don't use this. I ask the kids to stand to give me whatever their answer is, because it keeps them moving and it keeps them more engaged. But once you get to that, please complete the form for yourself and then make sure that you hit submit, which is at the bottom of the form. Everybody. So when you hit down at the bottom, there was a little pencil in the in my screen, and I think it was in yours too, but it doesn't matter. And when you hit responses, then this is what you'll see. You'll see a graph that explains that most of you think that you understand the job of the president pretty well, and a few really well. And in this one, if you're a current voter, do you tend to vote on policy issues or their personal traits? And most of you vote mostly on policy. And I think it was probably one person who said mostly on the person. And then for the third question, do you have clarity on the work experience, leadership qualities, and personal attributes that are important to you? Most of you felt quite a bit, and somebody, one person, not too much at all. But that's okay. This isn't a situation where there are right or wrong answers. With kids, you'll see most of the time they will be on the lower end of the scale. And in the question about whether you vote on policy or the person, most of them will vote on the person, most of the person. And that indicates that at the end, if their view has changed, you have really had an impact. So I am going to go back and I can see you again now. And we will continue. Okay, so what actually is the job of the US president? As a voter, I want you to think about yourself as the boss, and you're hiring somebody to do a job. And in this case, it happens to be the job of the president. So it's really important to know what the job description is. What are you hiring the person for? What's in that job description? So what are the main responsibilities? And that's what we're going to do. So this time we're going to use the Jamboard. So again, I'm going to right click, copy the link address, stop the share, go to the chat box, paste it in, and then hit enter. And that should lead you to the Jamboard that we're going to use today. All right, so in this case, we're going to be talking about you're going to be writing down something you think you're actually hiring for or a main responsibility. So you'll go over to the left, and right in the middle, there's a little tab that if you click on it, it's a sticky note. You can change the color if you want, but in here, write one of the things that you know or believe is in the job description. What's one of the main responsibilities? So I'm going to give an example. Type that, I hit save, and it appears on the board that we're all sharing. So you go ahead and do that. And if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. Leave it at that then. All right, so these are some of the things that we know a president has to do. What kind of skills does somebody need to do that? For example, let's take the one that says leads foreign policy. What do you think a person has to have in order to be able to do that? And you'll need to speak out because I can't see you at this point. What kind of experiences? What kind of training?
That was my answer.
Okay.
And they have to understand what's going on in other countries. They have to have diplomatic skills.
Okay. Anybody want to add to that? Diplomatic skills, understanding of what's actually happening in those other countries.
Understand how dynamics in other countries impact the security of the United States.
Okay, good. You want to move on to one of the other ones? About serving as commander-in-chief. What kind of skills do you need to have for that?
Of the armed services.
Armed services, yeah. Or what would be good to have? I mean,
yeah.
If you're going to be commander-in-chief of the armed services, do you think you would have had to serve in the armed forces? Or do you
That would be helpful.
That would be helpful. What else might be helpful?
An understanding of what each service really does.
Okay, good. What else?
An understanding of the limitations of the armed services vis-a-vis rights of the American people. Okay,
good. So you're getting the gist of what we're talking about. There are many, many responsibilities. Each one of them isn't just something we are saying. There's something a person needs to have in their background in order to be able to do that particular part of the job really well. Okay, so I am going to stop this. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slideshow. Okay, so you should be able to see that now. Okay, so what actually is the job of the president?
So I am on the wrong, whatever.
Can you see a picture of the Constitution?
Yeah, nope. Yes, now
okay.
I can.
Okay. Is anybody else having trouble seeing the picture?
I see it.
Okay.
Just got it.
All right. So the president's actual job description can be found in the Constitution. It's in Article 2, and this is what it says. The executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. And then with kids, I mentioned that the executive powers, or the executive branch, is only one branch of our government, that we also have two others, the judicial and the legislative, and they each have their own jobs too. And those jobs are different than the job that the president has. So if we're voting for people for those other jobs, we don't vote directly for the judges. We vote for that through the president. But if we're voting for people who are in the legislative branch, we need to know what their job description is. All right, so these are the things that are included in the Constitution. The responsibilities, and this is what's actually written, are to give Congress information about the State of the Union from time to time. And that is, of course, the State of the Union speech in January, usually in January of each year. And he or she also has the responsibility to ask Congress to consider measures that the president thinks are necessary and expedient. So the president can ask Congress to consider something that should be law. As far as the qualifications go, and this always, I get really interesting comments from the kids. These are the things that have to be a natural born citizen, and you have to be at least 35 years old, and that surprises them. the fact that you can be as young as 35. And the other thing is you have to be a resident of the US for at least 14 years. And somebody asked me, does that have to be a consecutive 14 years or not? And I don't know the answer to that, and I forgot to look it up. What was the question? Someone had one.
I'm just gonna say, when this was written, most people didn't live to be more than 50.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that.
yeah.
Okay. And again, this is something that I do differently when I'm in person. I talked yesterday about using those little sticky notes, and I find them really helpful here too. So before I show this slide and what slides down so that you can see it, I ask them to write down one thing they think is a responsibility, and they have to come up and stick that on the sticky board. And while they're doing that, I try to group them so that we don't have to read 27 different things. You know, one of them will say,
Yeah.
something like is over the army or something like that. And then you'll get 4 or 5 other things that are similar. And so I group them together. And then I do the same thing when it comes to the qualifications. Again, it gets them up, it gets them active, and it's quick and easy to do. All right. So according to Article 2, these are the things the president's responsible for. So we got it. Serves as commander-in-chief of the armed forces, executes and enforces laws created by Congress. And I think a couple of people said signs or vetoes laws. They also appoint cabinet members, ambassadors, Supreme Court judges, and I will say also heads of some of the agencies. And that's something that's just been, there's been a new rule by the Supreme Court on that. Signs legislation into law or vetoes it, negotiates and signs treaties. That was the foreign affairs thing, and issues executive orders to clarify and further clarify further existing laws. And then finally can extend pardons and clemencies for impeachment. So each one of those things that the president is responsible for requires certain background and certain skills. So I'm going to leave that on the screen for just a minute and let you think about what those requirements might actually be for a president. What should be in their background? What kind of experience should they have? What kind of knowledge? Now I want you to think about one other thing, and I'd like you can write it down if you want to commit to it, or you can think about one or more personal qualities. What kind of person do you want to see, or do you think is important to be in a position of president? So you're looking for adjectives to describe a president.
Someone with character, honesty.
Think about them for yourself, because I don't want to put kids on the spot. I don't want them to think that their answer is wrong. So you'll see how this slide progresses, but think about it for yourself. And then you go through the slide. You might have said inspiring or innovative or fair or honest or empathetic or analytical or decisive. But no matter what you said, identifying what you really value in the leader can help you imagine the types of people you'd like to see as a president before the actual election. And then you can look for those characteristics and vote for the person that is closest to meeting what you think is important in that person. All right, so we're going to do that. You're going to have another form to fill out. And this is one that will open up in a tab, and I'll show you what I want you to do with it afterwards. So I'm going to right click, copy the link. I put it into the chat and hit enter. And then you click on that and you will go to a form that will ask you to make some choices. Now, don't start yet, because up in the right-hand corner on the tab, you'll see that there's a little image of a form, and you're going to leave that open when we go back to the next thing. In this first section, you need to pick out only 3. So you need to pick out the most important ones to you. When you go to leadership values, you can only pick 5. And in the last one, personal attributes, you can only pick 3. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to be able to think about that for yourself, and then make those choices, and then leave them up.
Should we press submit?
Yes, when you're done, press submit, please. Is there anyone who has not yet done that? Okay, good. All right, so there were 38 people on here before you too. So these responses are going to reflect a lot of adults. These were not done with kids. But this time it gives you a bar graph, so you can see what was most important to the people who have been using it. Governance experience here, academic experience is pretty high, community organizing.
Excuse me, Pat, where is the bar graph?
You're not seeing that on the screen?
I don't see it either.
No.
Okay. Hang on, let me go back and share the screen again. Now you see it?
Partial.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
All right, and then personal attributes. This one I think is so funny. It was really clear what didn't matter at all to some people, including things like honesty.
Yeah. I wrote that in.
I wrote that in too.
Okay, all right, that's good.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, it was kind of a vague category.
Yes.
Other category, yeah.
Okay, so what, if you still have the tabs open up on the top, you should have, you'll see that there is that little thing that shows the form. So you're going to keep that up there. All right, and then the next thing that we're going to do is to look at some questions, because we're going to watch some video clips of people who have actually run for the office of president. We're going to be watching people debating in the primary debates for the 2016 and the 2020 elections. We're going to see 2 Republicans and we're going to see 2 Democrats, because that was the way we could best be nonpartisan. And the 2 Republicans are from the 2016 election and the 2 Democrats are from the 2020 election. So just with that ahead, these are the things that I want you to think about as you're watching. What do you notice about how the leaders present their leadership qualities and experiences through their words? And what did you notice about their personal characteristics? So you want to also watch for body language. And then what do you hear that either aligns with or differs from your priorities? When you get to that question on the form that you're going to be filling out, you can go back and forth to the tabs that you'll see at the top that show leadership, and then you go back to the questions. So again, the tab is here. I'm going to stop sharing, paste it in the chat, and there's the link for you. No problem, right?
Got it.
I don't have it. Where am I? Where am I?
Click on the last link that I just put in the chat box.
Okay,
And then you should see something that says debate clip reactions.
Did we see the debate?
No, you haven't seen the debate. You should
Oh, okay,
you should be seeing a form.
okay.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Now, when we do it, there are 4 different candidates. So the first one is going to be Jeb Bush. So I'm going to put JB, and then whatever matches my what I had on the leadership characteristics over here, that's what I want to be thinking about when I answer these questions for Jeb Bush. And if you put JB on it, you'll remember who it was. The next one is John Kasich, so JK. The next one is Elizabeth Warren, so EW. And the final one is Andrew Yang. So in each one of these, you will have answers for each one of the people. And you'll have it just like that.
Who was the fourth?
The fourth one was Andrew Yang.
Andrew.
This part is where you would be in trouble if you hadn't already clicked the sound sharing and the video clip button. But you can always stop the share and go back and click those 2 things and then come back to the program again. All right.
May I ask one more question, please?
Sure.
Do we submit one form for each of these candidates?
No, you'll do them all in the same form.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you're going to notice their words, their body language, and then you're going to be flipping back and forth between the 2 things to see what happened, what aligns with what you put on that form.
That's good.
All right, so here are the video clips. The first one is Jeb Bush.
Thank you all very much. The next president is going to be confronted with an unforeseen challenge. That's almost certain. It could be a pandemic, a major natural disaster, or an attack on our country. The question for South Carolinians and Americans is, who do you want to have sitting on behind the big desk in the Oval Office? Because that's the question. It's not the things that we're talking about today. It's the great challenge that may happen. I believe I will have a steady hand as Commander-in-Chief and President of the United States. I will unite this country around common purposes, because I did it as governor of the state of Florida. When I was governor, we had 8 hurricanes and 4 tropical storms in 16 months. Our state was on its back. We recovered far faster than what people thought because we led. We ran to the challenge rather than cutting and running. That's what we need in Washington, D.C. We need someone with a servant's heart that has a backbone that isn't going to focus on polls and focus groups, is going to focus on the American people to keep them safe and secure. I ask for your vote next Saturday. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so go back to your form. And next to JB, write what you noticed about his words and his body language. And then flip back to your leadership qualities. And what did you see in him that matches what you wrote on your form?
Oh,
So just short notes.
okay.
I guess we can't watch it again, can we?
No, but you have 3 more to watch. And really, when you think about it, you don't get to see more than one time when they're doing those primary debate pitches. You get a longer period of time, but you don't get to see it a second time. I shouldn't say that. I guess you do if you watch the news. All right, about 30 more seconds, and then we're going to go on. Okay, so this one is John Kasich.
Well, I want to thank the people of South Carolina. You've been fantastic. And look, what I want you to know is I'm going to send a lot of power, money, and influence back to where we all live. But as I've traveled around South Carolina, I've noticed something. You know, it's that people have a sense that you're not going to wait on a president. You know, when I was a kid, we didn't wait on presidents to come to that little blue-collar town and fix things. You know, the Lord made all of us special. The Lord wants us to be connected. I believe we're part of a very big mosaic. And I'll send the power back. And whoever gets elected president here, hopefully we'll take care of the issue of jobs and wages and Social Security and the border. But the spirit of America rests in all of us. It's in our guts. It's taking care of our children. It's taking care of the lady next door who just lost her husband. It's fixing the schools where we live and telling kids to stay off of drugs. You see, I think what the Lord wants is for us to engage. And in America, the spirit of America doesn't come from the top down. The spirit of America rests in us. And I want to call on everyone in America to double down and realize that you were made special to heal this country and lift it for everyone. Thank you all very much, and I hope I can have your vote in South Carolina.
Okay.
Okay, now you do the same thing, but this time it's JK. About 30 seconds more again. Just so you know, if you're doing this, you give about 2 minutes. First one sometimes takes a little longer because people are getting used to it. But by the second, third, and fourth one, about 2 minutes is enough. Couple more seconds.
I don't know.
Okay, so the third one is Elizabeth Warren.
I was born and raised in Oklahoma, but I'm sure glad to be in Texas tonight. All three of my brothers served in military bases here in Texas. That was their ticket to the middle class. Me, I got my big opportunity about a half mile down the road from here at the University of Houston, back when it cost $50 a semester. For a price that I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I got to finish my 4-year degree and I became a special needs teacher. And after law school, my first big job was back here in Houston. By then, I had 2 little kids. And when childcare nearly brought me down, my Aunt Bee moved in and saved us all. The paths to America's middle class have gotten a lot smaller and a lot narrower. Today, service members are preyed upon by predatory lenders. Students are crushed by debt and families cannot afford childcare. I know what's broken, I know how to fix it, and I'm going to lead the fight to get it done.
Okay, and then the last one of all is Andrew Yang.
In America today, everything revolves around the almighty dollar. Our schools, our hospitals, our media, even our government. It's why we don't trust our institutions anymore. We have to get our country working for us again instead of the other way around. We have to see ourselves as the owners and shareholders of this democracy rather than inputs into a giant machine. When you donate money to a presidential campaign, what happens? The politician spends the money on TV ads and consultants, and you hope it works out. It's time to trust ourselves more than our politicians. That's why I'm going to do something unprecedented tonight. My campaign will now give a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families, someone watching this at home right now. If you believe that you can solve your own problems better than any politician, go to yang2020.com and tell us how $1,000 a month will help you do just that. This is how we will get our country working for us again, the American people.
Okay. So what I'd like you to do now, that has forced you into thinking about these candidates a different way. And obviously you would never make a decision based on 1 minute's worth
Yeah.
of information from a candidate. So just realize that I don't think that you would do it that way. But what I'd like you to do is to go back now to the leadership qualities that you looked at, that you chose, the personal qualities, the experiences that somebody has had, whatever you can tell from that 1 minute of their presentation, which one comes closest to what you wrote down. You don't tell me, all right? And tell the kids, don't tell me, but for yourself, just write down the initials of whoever was the closest. Okay, and then just reactions. What did this experience do to you? What kind of observations can you make?
I just oh, wait a minute.
Anyone?
What are we doing with this? We don't have to write this in the form.
No, this is for yourself. And I also, when I'm in a classroom with the kids, I don't want to know what they chose. That's not my business. It's their business to make decisions for themselves. But I think asking for reactions to what did this mean to you? How did you feel when you were doing it? Were you surprised by anything? Those are the kinds of things that I would like to draw out from the kids and then from you, just having done this on your own.
I'll go.
Okay, thank you, Debbie.
I'd say having an analytical structure, a checklist, made a difference in how I approached each candidate's views. Some were more inspiring, but some had more experience. And I'd rather have someone that's got more experience in various aspects rather than just an inspirational attitude and skill.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just looking at the presentation style of the various candidates, I just was interested in how effectively they packaged their point of view, their personal qualities, their experience, and so forth. And I thought 2 of them didn't do that very well. One of them did it spectacularly well, and the other did a so-so job. But that messaging.
Did it make a difference that you looked first, or you looked first at what you personally cared about, or would you have come to the pardon?
Yeah. It's sort of a comprehensive knowledge of how things work.
Okay,
And that's what I was looking for.
thanks. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think it's really hard in 1 minute to give any kind of evaluation. And for me, who is a news junkie, I watch that stuff all the time, so I know most of them. But you know, I mean, the presentation, the style, the preparedness, the conviction, you know.
Conviction.
You know, you can see that. I put them assertive, non-assertive, you know, how they're going to move things forward. But that's hard to do in a minute, really.
Oh, I know that. And that's why I said what I did. And
Yeah.
obviously you're not going to make your final decision based
no.
on 1 minute. But the process of looking first at what you value and then at looking at the candidate can sometimes shift the way you perceive what's going on that stage. It's so easy to have an emotional reaction because they have done so much practicing and they know, you know, I mean, look at all the advisors that they probably have. What do you say? How do you move? All of those things. Whose attention are you trying to capture? So if you look at it as critically as their advisors do, you can make a more considered choice than if you just react emotionally to what you see on the screen. So that's the point of it. And the kids usually come away feeling, you know, a little bit more empowered. They've said things to us in the exit tickets like, I used to think I would just vote the way my parents did. Now I know I can think for myself. And that's really what you want to hear from kids. That is how you want to make them approach the choice for any office. I think it would be interesting for you to take a look, go back to the website yourself and take a look, because each one of those programs has actual people running for the office that is the topic of that slideshow. Oh, I just saw that Jean is here. I have to apologize to her because I'm not sure when she came in because I was on the other screen. But at any rate, if you look at the two people who are running for a Board of Education in Tennessee, for example, you're going to say, oh my God, how do I pick between these two? But one of them is going to be closer to what you put on that sheet than the other one is. And so the next piece of the activity that we do with kids, going to give you a little bit of experience with it, but it takes some time. It takes probably 7 minutes to 10 minutes, and I don't want to spend that much time today. But I am going to put you into breakout rooms, and this is what I want you to do with the characteristics that you've put down on your sheet. There'll be, let's see, we've got 8 people, so I'll put 4 people in each room. So one person, actually, I think I have this on a slide, and if not, I'm going to make a slide. All right, one person's going to be the leader, one person is going to be a recorder, and one person's going to be the spokesperson. So just figure that out real fast. The leader's going to ask each person in the group of what was your most important characteristics as in personal qualities, for example. So you go quickly around the room and each one of you tells what you wrote down. If there's something that you have in common, then write that down. If there's nothing that you have in common, then take a couple of minutes to try to explain to the other people in the group why you chose those things. What's the most important one to you? And can you convince them that that's an important quality, right? It doesn't have to be their perfect quality, but an important quality. The thought behind that whole process is that there is never, ever going to be a perfect person. You are not going to find the person whose characteristics you checked on that sheet unless you're extremely lucky. You're always going to have to choose whoever is the closest. So when you have to go through the process of trying to narrow that down, it gives you a sense of the difficulty of acquiescing, of saying, all right, he's not perfect, but he's better than the other one. Or she's not perfect, but she's better than he is. And so that's the person that I'm going to vote for. Think about yourself. If you were one of those undecided voters right now, how would you make your final decision? You would probably be on the person who comes closest, not the person who's your perfect one. So let me make get out some breakout rooms. You'll wind up with 4 people in each room. Pick your leader, your recorder, and your spokesperson. And I'll give you 5 minutes. All right, good.
Oh, we left 2 of them behind.
We get everybody back? No, we're missing one person. Who are we missing? Judith, right?
Judith's here.
Oh, Sarah Beth. There we go.
I make that work. Okay.
Okay, you did. You made it work.
Eventually it did, yeah.
Okay, who's the spokesperson for room 1, which had Jean, Judith, Rita, and Sarah Beth in it? Okay, Jean?
So we all agreed we would like some form of leadership experience, which could be in government, in a service organization, could be executive, it could be legislative, governance, whatever, but we all felt that it was important to have that, some kind of leadership experience that would show that they've done something like this before.
Mm-hmm. And how about room 2?
We're on the same page. We all agreed that executive experience was very, very important. Legislative or government something.
Okay, and how about in the personal qualities?
Oh, we didn't know we were supposed to talk about that.
We didn't get that.
You didn't get that far. How about
We didn't get that far.
How about the leadership qualities? Did you get to that?
Well, we said, yeah, legislative, executive, or government experience.
Okay, that was the experience part, I think. It wasn't the leadership, but I could be wrong because I'm not.
Whatever it was, we didn't get there.
Okay. Did it?
We had trouble figuring out our roles in this.
Okay. In person, and what I could have done and I didn't do was to drop in on each one of the rooms and help them to move it along. So that was my fault. I take that. But what normally happens is that the kids will get through one section, like what you just did, and then they might have one characteristic that they can all agree to. And then they say, the rest of it was so hard. And the point you make then is it is hard.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is really important. So even if it's hard, don't give up. Pick the person that's closest to what you think.
You do give them much more time than you gave us, though, right?
I give them probably about 10 minutes. Yeah.
Oh.
And I move them along so that if I'll even have the sentence written down so they can just write in a word in the section. Like leadership, they'll have 5 lines, and personal qualities 3 lines. So when they've got something they can agree to in each one of those go down right away. And then the negotiation has to take place about the other thing. I will stop a group if it starts to get contentious, and sometimes it does. I can remember having one young man who just would not give up on the fact that he felt military experience was important. And it got to the point where he was really upset. And I said, okay, no, we don't want you upset. We just want you to know it's hard. And then we stopped the whole group. So you have to have a sense of that when you're working with kids. But you're good at that. So I know that you can do that. Usually the next question that I get is, so how do you know more about the candidates? And that's when I make a pitch for vote411.org, because I tell them that candidates are all presented with the same questions, and they all need to or are expected to respond to those same questions. And then Vote411 posts them on the website with no editing done at all. So what you're reading is what the candidate or their staff said, but at least it's as close as you can get to what that candidate stands for. Another place that you can look for that kind of information is Ballotopedia, and it too is nonpartisan. I try to do the same thing. And if you can't find something on those 2 that are going to give you all of the information that you want, then it's also wise to go to their, not your own social media feed, but their social media sources. So you would look at their Facebook page, because what they're going to put on that page is what they believe in. And the same thing is true with their Instagram account. They're going to be promoting the things that they think are the most important to them. So even though if you go to their social media pages, you're not going to get everybody's point of view, which you do when you go to the 2 that are on the screen right now, at least you know what they stand for, and you can begin to make comparisons just the way you did on the screen just now. So the more information you have, the better your decision is going to be. So it is worth putting in some time, really getting to know the candidates and what they stand for. The other
I
thing,
I have an idea.
pardon me?
I have an idea.
Okay, what is it?
What if you showed 2 candidates instead of 4? And then 2 of the strongest candidates, and had the students look at them, analyze them, do a you know, and then have the breakout room or whatever discussion, and then have them go back and look at the 2 weaker candidates perhaps, and do an analysis, or just do it as a repeat so that they can build their skills.
That's a really interesting thought. I'm going to consider that. In some of the cases, there are only 2 candidates. In some of the other election types, there are only 2 people. But even if we pick just 2 here, it would give them a better simulation of what like a presidential choice might be instead of the primary. The only thing I would say is if you do that, and we haven't done it, make sure that you get 1 Democrat and 1 Republican, because otherwise you'd be challenged based on our political leanings.
Right.
So the other thing, we talked about this yesterday, so Susan, you're the only one that didn't see it, but the chart that's on the left is from Ad Fontes Media, and when you and I talk about the background information that I need to share with you, I'll tell you more about that. But that's a way that if you hear stuff or if you see stuff in the paper, you can go back and find out whether or not that's a reliable source and how it leans, whether it leans left or right. And it doesn't matter if it leans a particular way. I wouldn't look at the real extremes, but I mean, if it leans a little bit left or a little bit right, and it's in the reliable part, you're still going to get pretty good information. All right, so here's the nobody's perfect. This is what you just did, so I'm going to flip through it. And then we ask the kids to respond with, I used to think, but now I think. How has your thinking changed because you spent the last 40 minutes doing what we did here? I'm going to skip that and show you if I were going to go on, I would just hide that slide. So we would go from this slide right to this slide. So this is the simulation that is really engaging for kids. So we say, okay, you've won, your candidate is in office, and as close to perfect leader as you have has been elected, but they're going to face some challenges. And so what they need to be able to do is to face those challenges. So you can do one of 2 things. You can either create a Jamboard, and I'll show you what that one looks like. You'll see, now remember yesterday or the day before, we talked about the fact that kids are passionate about issues. And so there are likely to be crises that come up that match their issues. So one of the things that is a crisis that many kids are concerned about is climate. And so I say to you, try to think of the one thing that you care most about, and then go over to the picture little image. So it's right below the sticky tab. And then you're going to be able to find a picture that matches that. Now, yesterday I talked about using Google Images, and you can do that. You can put in what you're concerned about. So I'm going to this time say immigration. And you get all kinds of pictures, and you can pick your own. I happen to like this one. And it'll appear on the screen. And then you can use these pictures in the next activity. So I want you to do that for yourself. Go to the picture image where you're going to add an image. And then choose Google Images, which is in the center tab. and then go up to the search bar and put just a one word hint for the kind of picture that you want. Isn't this fun? Okay, so you can see what's happening. All right, and then what we would do is let the kids narrow this down. All right, so there are a number here on climate. There are, let's see, there are a couple, I think, on healthcare or women's rights.
Yeah, one on reproductive rights.
Right, and there's one.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, there's a anatomical.
Right, but I'm assuming
That's mental health.
None
Yeah.
of those that people clicked are actually displaying on my screen.
Oh,
For me,
Yeah, I don't see anything.
I
Called
see
downloading.
Well,
boxes.
that's
White
better
boxes with
when
3
they don't
dots in it.
overlap.
when
Okay,
you if you go back to the chat, there should be a link, and it's the last link that's in there. Click
I'm
it.
on the right page, but whatever images people selected are just coming out as white boxes on mine.
oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
They're
see,
uploading.
I see the wildfires
there
in
they-
the upper right. I see one center photo of reproductive freedom. I see a box that says climate, and the rest are a bunch of white boxes with 3 little blinking dots.
Oh,
I went back to the link, Susan, and they came up then.
Did it work?
Uh-huh.
try it.
There it is.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you for that suggestion.
Okay. This is why we work as a group. It's great. Okay, so out of these, we would ask the kids to pick one of them, and then use their choices in the next activity. So they've had some fun. So we'll go back to the crisis ahead. All right, and then this is the task. You can see this now, right? Or no?
Yes.
Okay, it says crisis ahead. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
Okay.
So
Oh, I see. Okay.
you take that leader that you created and think about them. They've been elected now. They've been in office for 9 months, long enough to get settled, but not so long that they have a track record. And one of these crises has emerged. And so you're in small groups again, and you have 5 minutes. First, you have to choose your crisis. And I only give them a minute to do that. And if they haven't chosen it, I just say, all right, then use one of the ones that's in here, and I'll suggest one. And then you've got 5 minutes left, and you have to start drafting the opening lines of a press conference that will let your constituents know that you've got this under control. And what you say should reflect the leadership qualities of your ideal leader. So if you think back to those 4 presidential hopefuls, Andrew Yang might throw money at it. John Kasich might say, okay, let's get you going on the ground in the local community. Elizabeth Warren might have a government unit or organization step in to help. And Jeb Bush would say, well, I've done this before and I know how to do it. Kind of.
oh,
So at any rate, you want to have it try to reflect whatever you saw in that candidate. All right, so here are 4 crises that have already been set up for them if you don't want to go through the process of having them choose one. All right, so imagine the drinking water in several major cities becomes undrinkable because of an infrastructure compromise, or that a foreign nation has been able to hack into the Department of Homeland Security and obtain sensitive information about every single person in the United States. Or that even though we've gotten herd immunity to COVID, there's another new variant that's popped up. And by the way, these 4 things came from kids, and this one they came up with before COVID. Before we was there. So I thought that was pretty good. And then a storm like Hurricane Sandy was on its way. So they need to choose one of the 4, refer back to the leadership qualities that they thought were important, and then start writing. And then you choose a press secretary to read it to the rest of the group at the end of that 5 minutes. And the responses from the kids is really pretty powerful, even though their press release might only have 5 sentences, 4 sentences in it. The process of trying to think about how you're going to solve that problem and then what you're going to say to your people give you a sense of the gravity of that job and the fact that you really do have this kind of decision to make. And you want to choose a leader who's going to be able to make those kinds of decisions. And that's the point that you make at the end of it. If you use this, then instead of doing I used to think, but now I think at the end of the first section, you ask them to do it now. If you do this on 2 separate days, 2 separate exit tickets, and then you've got a sense of what each one took away. Okay, and that's it for the vote by design presidential elections. When you have some time, look at some of the other elections so that you can see the minor differences that exist between them. Basically, the skills that you learned in any one of the lessons, you can transfer to another one. So, any responses, any questions to this?
Could you just go over those crises again?
Sure. All right, so a storm like Hurricane Sandy, something COVID-like, where a new variant emerges, a foreign nation hacked in and has information about everybody in the country, or there's an infrastructure compromise.
Okay.
Okay. Any reactions to the lesson overall?
A lot of thinking.
A lot of
Good.
thinking.
A lot of quick thinking.
I
Well,
think they're all really bad.
Yeah.
isn't it interesting though? I mean, like I said to you, when I did this with Lisa Kay, out of those clips, I would have chosen somebody different than I actually voted for. So I thought that said to me that this is a really valuable experience for people to have, even those of us who are experienced voters,
Yeah.
our whole lives. So, okay. The next thing that I have to share with you is the Student Advocate Toolkit. This was created during COVID, right after the lockdown, and right after it was announced that everybody in New Jersey was going to have to vote by mail for the first time. So Sarah Beth, your state of Washington had no problem doing this because everybody votes by mail all the time. So there's a much greater participation rate where you are than where we are.
Although not as much as you would hope, but yes.
But vote by mail does generate.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We have the best election system in the country, if not the world.
There you go. Be proud. But in New Jersey, most people went to the polls. We didn't have early voting. We had 1 single day of voting. And if you wanted to vote by mail until 2 or 3 years ago, no, maybe longer than that, COVID has kind of changed my sense of time, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Until then, you had to have an excuse to vote with an absentee ballot. And that's still the case in some states across the country. So all of a sudden, everybody got to vote by mail. And there was an absolute panic and outcry and complaints that this was all going to be, terrible, that there were going to be no representation, your ballot was going to be lost, blah, blah, blah. So we said, all right, we're teaching in schools. We've got an audience that can do something about this, no matter how young they are. As long as they've got accurate information, they can use it with the people in their households or in their pods, because some of them had created pods with families that were outside their immediate family in order for the kids to be able to socialize. And we started teaching how to use the Student Advocate Toolkit to students in schools and challenging them to just talk to one person about this. Try to get one person to register to vote that was never voting before, or one person to feel more comfortable voting by mail. The best feedback that I got was from a teacher in a middle school in Asbury Park, which is a very underrepresented community in Monmouth County. He contacted me the day afterwards and he said, I have to tell you, I had a kid this morning say to me, I got my grandmother to register and she's never voted before.
God.
Wow.
Even if there's just one person like that, it's worth it. You know, I mean, it just warmed my heart to know that something that we did made a difference in not only that voter's life, but also in her grandmother's life, because she saw then that it was, she had power, she could empower somebody else, and that she did something really special with her grandmother for her grandmother. So that's what's, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was just going to add that that coincides with our experience too. We have an amazingly dynamic teacher who is doing this in a diverse community, and many first generation or immigrant kids in the school, and their pride in being able to explain things to their families and encourage their families to vote and be a leader within that smaller group was the main theme that came through. Just enormous pride and ability.
Yeah. And so that's what we hope to generate. Now, all right, this is back to our website, and it's under the Fighting for the Vote suite of programs, and it's the last one down. So there's the last video, but the toolkit is right here. Now, there is not a script for this because we figured kids aren't going to use a script. We can show it to them and show them how to use it, and then it's their job. They've got to take it from there. I'm going to show you that there is a template so that you can create it for another state, and that Arizona has already done that for themselves.
Should we be seeing something?
You should be. Are you not?
No.
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 See you.
Yeah.
I see you now. Okay. So Arizona has already done it for
There
themselves.
it is.
Got it.
Okay. And they've made some changes, but not too many. And so has Colorado. Now, Colorado's also a vote by mail state, but you can see how they've, adapted it for themselves. We're going to look at the New Jersey ones. And there is a Spanish version. And then in the English one, we have 21 counties in the state, and each one of the counties can make their own decisions about which voting machines they use, what the ballot looks like. So we had to modify it for every single one of the counties. And this is updated for every single election. We have one person, that's her responsibility. She's done it for Monmouth County, and we have our intern working on all the other counties now. But so I'm going to use the Monmouth County one to show you. All right, so the QR code is what the kids use to download this onto their phones, and then they can save it. There are 3 little dots in the upper right-hand corner when you do that, and one of those allows you to download it to your phone. So they can have it there. So that's how we get it to them. And then if you look down the left-hand side, you'll see that there are a number of slides in blue. And each one of those begins a different section of the toolkit. This first slide summarizes what you can find in the Student Advocate Toolkit. So let's say your grandmother has a question about registering to vote. What you want to do is to find that particular blue slide.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. And then what comes after that is all of the information that they would need in order to help their grandmother register to vote. There is a section on primaries, and again, we don't use that unless we're actually in a primary election. The last section of all is a calendar for the upcoming elections. Where is it?
There.
And it breaks it down for the kids. So what can you do between now and October? And it includes helping people get a vote by mail ballot. Then what do you do in November? And then there's just a chart, and they can print that if they want to. So they've got it handy for them. And then there's a summary. You want to get people registered, you want to help them make a plan, and you want to make sure that they actually do the voting. Okay, so I'm going to go up and just go quickly through each one of these sections. We give them a place, again, where they can find information about the ballot. And we emphasize that Vote 411 is not just about candidates, but there's also a whole lot of information in there about getting registered, about what's on your ballot. And there is a first-time voters check on that website. It's really, really valuable. And then if you go to New Jersey, votenewjersey.gov, that is the voter information portal. And again, there's all kinds of information broken down very clearly so that you can find the exact information that you need if you need more than what is already in this toolkit.
Pat, can I mention something quickly?
Sure.
Vote 411 I have used with college kids that are from different states, and it has a map of the country. You can click on your state and find out the details for your home state in terms of vote by mail or whatever the other requirements are, which you can't get on the New Jersey site. You can only get it on Vote 411. So people should know about that.
Thank you. That's really important. There is also a website, vote. It's I'll look it up and I'll add it when I send you the summary of today. It is vote.gov, I think. I think that's all that's in it. But there is a section of it for students who are away at college. Very specific information for them about how to get registered, how to make the decision about where you want to vote in your home state or the college state, and how to get the information and how to get vote by mail ballots for each one of those states. So maybe I'll add that to this because we do use it primarily with kids in school, so that's important. Okay, so let's say somebody gives you an excuse for not wanting to vote. You can talk to them about the fact that everything that they care about happens because you voted for somebody. Everything that happens in terms of what we do in the environment. That can be local, it can be state, it can be county, it can be federal. But there are decisions made at every single level. There are decisions made on education and so on. So we tell the kids, try to find out what the issue is that that person cares about a lot, and then show them how it is impacted by a decision that an elected official has to make. And then why is this important? Because we're going to be voting for these people this time. New Jersey has just started early voting. And so we've started right here putting the dates of the early voting down. And then an excuse, what happens if you don't vote? You're giving your vote to somebody else, really. People in power listen to those who are voting for them because they want to keep their jobs. These charts probably look familiar to those of you who were here yesterday, but you can see if you're talking to a younger person whose voice is being heard right now. And then there's an excuses game. And that's the same excuses game that we use at the end of the truth about turnout. So that was the first day. These are just a couple of the excuses, but if you see there's a link here to the actual cards that we use and to how to use it if you're going to use it as a game. And then there are a list of extra excuses. So the kids can become, let's say somebody gives an excuse that's not on here. They can go to that website and they can find that excuse and find a good answer for it. When it comes to the primary election, I'm going to show you this because I think it's pretty cool. So in New Jersey, Why vote in a primary election? Well, in New Jersey, that's how political parties choose their strongest candidate to run for office in November. And this is how it works, right? There are political parties. So in the Black Party, they will choose the one person out of those three that they think is the best candidate, the best chance of winning in November. And the Blue Party will do the same thing. There are three candidates running. They'll pick the best one. And then in November, those two winners will be up against one another. Now, in the primary, only the people who were in the Black Party can pick, because they're trying to pick the best candidate. And if you have people from the other party, they might sabotage that. And the same thing here, you can only have blue people voting for the blue winner. But when it comes to the general election, and when there's one blue person against one black person, then you can vote for anybody that you want to vote for. So that's kind of cool. The kids like that. And then if you want to vote for a primary election, there's an explanation here about how you do that. If you want to choose your political party, you can do it using the voter registration form. There's a little place down here where you have to write in the name of the party that you want to belong to, but then we make it a point to say, the first time you vote in a primary election, you can go right to the polls and the poll worker will say, which party do you want to vote in? And they will give you the ballot for that party. Then from that time on, until you tell them in writing that you want to switch parties, you will be registered in that party and you can always vote in that party's primary. If you switch, then you can vote in the other party's primary. This section on registering to vote tells you what you need to know. How do you know that you're eligible to register? And I can't tell you now. I thought it was unusual the first time it happened, but it has happened to me, I'm going to say more than a dozen times now. When I go over these criteria with kids, I will have kids come up to me afterwards and say, can I vote? And I'll say to them, are you a U.S. citizen? And they'll say, yes. Are you 18 years old? Because you can't vote until you're 18. Yes. Then, and obviously you're not in prison because you're standing in front of me. And have you lived here for 30 days? Yes. Then, yes, you can vote. And they'll say, but I'm Mexican. And I'll say, I know that, but you just told me you were a citizen, you're at least 18, and, all the other criteria. I'm Mexican, though. How can I vote if I'm Mexican? I'm saying, because that's your ethnicity. That's where you are originally from. But right now, you meet the qualifications to vote in the United States. And they're surprised. And I say to them, make sure you tell other people you know this same information, because it's a pretty common assumption that it's not okay to vote if you are of a particularly Hispanic. People seem to feel this, no matter where they're from, not just Mexico. Most of the Central American countries feel that way. But I also make the point for them that you really need to make sure that you are already a U.S. citizen. And I use that term already because I know that some of the kids that are talking to me are not. And there are penalties if you try to register to vote and you're not a citizen. You don't want somebody to wind up in jail because they inadvertently thought that they could do it. So just be aware of that and make sure that you can clarify it for the people who might be unsure of their citizenship status. And some kids are not sure. There are kids who don't know that they were brought here as very young children and that they're not citizens. So it's a touchy subject. Sarah Beth, what do you want to say?
I just wanted to point out that it's not advisable to ask people directly whether they are citizens or not.
Right.
That's something that when we're tabling, sometimes volunteers slip up. But that's not a question you ask.
How do you
ask them?
Okay, and that's why we say not already a citizen, because we're not.
Yeah, and I think
asking
that's completely valid. I just wanted to, just because I've heard people say that before, and it's just casually, because why wouldn't you? You know, but it's a delicate situation for them, and it's not a
Mhm.
question you want to ask directly. That's all.
Right, right. Thank you for that. Okay, in New Jersey, when you go to votenewjersey.gov, there is an app that you can download, and I've been fighting with the New Jersey Department of State, because I think you should be able to just go to the App Store and get the app for this, but right now it's pretty convoluted. But if you go to the website, then you can download the app, and at this voter information portal, kids can put in their last name and their date of birth, and then hit enter, and it will come up with information about whether or not they're registered to vote. If nothing comes up, if it says no information recorded, I think that's what it says, then you know that you need to register because you're not yet registered. If it comes up with your voter registration number, then you know you're good to go. In New Jersey, the kids get their kids are automatically registered, or supposed to be automatically registered, when they get their driver's licenses. That varies across the state, because you can opt out of getting to of being registered. The way the clerk at DMV says something to the kids, like if they're at the end of their driver's registration and they've had to fill out all kinds of forms and sign things and stuff, and all they want to do is drive. So if an agent says, do you want to also register to vote? You have to do this, that, and the other thing. Sometimes the kids will say no, without realizing that they are, hurting themselves, that they're not actually going to be registered. So what should happen is it's just part of the process, but that doesn't always happen. So it really is important for the kids to check. The only thing you need to know is that on that website, it is only when you turn 18 that your name will appear. And that's due to privacy laws. They can't put out the information allegedly until the kids are 18. And again, I'm working with the Department of State trying to get them to change that. I've got the one person convinced that I think has some influence, but it's not there yet. You can also check your status. Again, Vote 411 has that information, but again, it's only after you're 18 that you can get that information out yourself. My response to kids is, if somebody comes up without being registered, give them the registration form, help them register online, whatever you can do to help them do it, because it's only the last form that is submitted that is considered your registration form. So it doesn't hurt to do it 10 times. And you can do it for other reasons, like if you get married and change your name, if you move, if you change your gender, all kinds of things can be done on that. If you want to declare a political party. So no matter how many times you send that form, it's only the last one that's done. So if there's any question about whether you're registered or not, register. And then we give them that information. QR code will take them right to the registration form where they can fill it out online. They do need to have either the last 4 numbers of their social or a driver's license number. Now you might say, well, if they're automatically registered when they get their driver's license, but the answer you now know is that not everybody does. So they might have their driver's license and still not be registered. And I will also point out that in urban areas, there are a lot of kids that don't get their driver's license because they don't need it. So that's really, those are really areas that are ripe for increasing the number of registered voters and access to schools in those areas. You can also sign on the screen or scan and upload it. And it used to be an issue, but it's much easier now to actually get a decent signature on the screen. When you go in to vote, you're now signing again on a tablet. So it's similar to what would go through. So either way is fine. Or you can print the voter registration form at home. Again, we give them the link. and then you can fill it out. This walks them through how to do it, what's really important. There is a video that shows them how to do it, and then this is a link to the online form. So they have what they need in order to help somebody else register to vote. Making a plan is another thing. We know that if people have a plan, they are much, much more likely to vote. So we urge the kids to ask them questions. How are you going to vote? Are you going to get a mail-in ballot? Do you know how to do that? Do you know how to submit it? When are you, what are the dates that are available to you if you're working on a weekend? When can you go to the polls if you want to vote in person? All of those kinds of questions. And then there's a little bit more information for them. And then again, for whom should you vote? And that's access to information about the candidates. Here's the thing that was really useful during COVID. Voting by mail, there is a separate application, but you can also use the voter registration form. So you have two ways to be able to get a vote by mail ballot. The next one is a video. There are images there, but there's also a video that walks people through step by step by step. And this was what was so valuable during that period of time when people were so frantic about it. And then also the information about where to submit it. And you can see we've also put the deadlines on that. This was added afterwards because of the early voting period. So people in New Jersey can be, a lot of people still don't realize that we do have early voting, and there are some differences. So in early voting, for example, you can go to any one of the polling places in your county to vote. On election day, you have a very specific place that you have to go. So the kids learn that, and then they can pass that information along. This is a picture on every one of the counties. This is different, but this is the picture of the actual machinery that they're going to use when they go vote, and brief instructions about what happens when you use those machines. On Friday, we're going to talk about the voting simulation. I can't tell you how impressed I am with the impact that that has on kids in reducing their concerns about voting. And this is a big reason. They don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to look stupid. They're afraid. And this can resolve so many of their fears if the kind of information is available to them. And if they've had the actual experience, their attitudes change from, I don't want to do this, to, I can't wait to do this. During COVID, there were lots of questions about whether or not your vote by mail ballot was going to be counted. And so this section helped kids, help others in their households know whether or not their ballot was received and know when it was counted, because you can get those two pieces of information. They need to sign up to ask for the information, and then they will be told when the ballot is received and when it is counted. And if they can't get it online through using that form, they can actually call the Board of Elections in their county, and there is a person designated to answer the questions for them. If their ballot is rejected for some reason, there are a couple of things that can happen. If it's rejected because of signature, and that's the major reason that ballots were rejected during that period of time, then they will get what's called a cure letter, and they can fix that problem. They can submit a new signature. It will be matched to the one that was on their ballot. And as long as it's matched, then that ballot will count. If there was another problem, and the biggest problem was, and I'm going to go back to the picture of the vote by mail ballot. Biggest problem was when people went to put it into the envelope. When they put it in the first envelope, there is a perforated section on here that they needed to sign. And it needed to stay on that envelope because that was what was used to confirm the signature was of somebody who could vote. If they tore that off, and it got to the Board of Elections, there was no way to verify it. So we urged the kids to be sure to tell people that they had to make sure that that stayed on it. Otherwise, they'll get a letter telling them that it wasn't okay and they don't have the chance to fix it if that was the case. And this is the number they can call in Monmouth County to find out about their ballot. I flipped through this before. This summarizes it. Get people to register, get them to commit, and then get them to vote. More information about trusted sources and contacting the league, and then a pitch for our ambassador program, because really that's what the kids were doing. So that's it. And any questions about it? Pretty straightforward.
I had a question about the NJ Elections app. I find it's available on the Apple Store. Is it not available on Android?
I wasn't able to get it on the Apple Store.
Well, just search for NJ Elections and see if it comes up.
I'm going to do that right now. Thank you.
The other thing was I wanted to mention that when my kids went to college, because my son was taking the train to New York and because my daughter was taking an airplane to Arizona, I did not let them get their driver's licenses because I didn't want to pay the increased insurance for that. Once they get the license, you have to pay for the insurance for them to drive, even if they're not home and they don't have a car. So I did not let them get their licenses until they finished college. My daughter still doesn't have one because I scared her when we went test driving. But I did that intentionally because it would have cost me the same amount for the insurance as it cost me for the monthly train ticket to New York. So in my case, it was intentional, and other parents might do that as well. Let's see.
Thank you, Jean. That's a really good point that I'd never thought about.
And another point I wanted to make was that every county can have a different kind of machine. So the picture you showed may not be representative of the equipment in a different county. There is a list of what kind of equipment each county has on the votenj.gov site, but I don't know that they have pictures.
I'm going to show you something. Sussex
Data
County.
ready for the different counties.
That's why there's 21.
Wow. That's a lot of work.
Sussex County. Well, most of it is really just copying from one to another, but there are different things on.
Right.
You know. So this is the machine in Sussex County.
Okay.
And Burlington County is different too, because we've done the voting simulations there. Let me see what the picture is there.
Page 27.
So
it's what, 20 something?
So that's what theirs looks like. So that's why there are 21 different versions of the New Jersey Student Advocate Toolkit.
Yeah, the drop boxes look different too. You're right.
So at any rate, but that's a good point that they are different. And so if you're using one version, you have to make sure that you're using the version that it really matches the county that you're in. Okay, let me stop sharing this again. Any other comments or things to add?
I have a comment or a question. I saw you covered provision or curing and rejection letters. Did you cover provisional ballots, like the importance if you're told not to vote, that should be part of the backup plan?
Really good question, though. We do that when we do the voting simulation. That wasn't the case in the vote by mail, and so I never even thought about putting it in this one, but that might be a really good thing to add to this because people are voting in person right now. I'm gonna make
And then
myself.
they get freaked out when they get frustrated.
I
They don't
know.
what to do.
They do.
So when we do the voting simulation, what happens is they go through the whole process, all the way from registration up through getting the results of the ballot. And we've actually switched the order now. We put the registration at the end because we found there is such a change in kids' intention to vote that many more of them register after they've gone through the experience than would do it before. So we have registration forms set up on tables and we send them from the voting booth. They get their sticker, they use their exit ticket, and then go sit down and fill out that form. And there are people walking around to help them do it. And there's one school that had 700 seniors that we went to in an urban area. We registered almost 200 people that day.
Wow.
So it can be really, really impactful. But when we do the voting simulation, we start by talking to the kids in a small group about some of the rules of going into a polling place. And we give 2 kids that the teacher has checked with ahead of time to make sure that they're okay with being singled out during this process. One of them says wrong district and one of them says vote by mail. And when that kid gets up to sign the tablet, they hand that ticket to the poll worker who's there. And we train kids to be poll workers, by the way, because now you can be 16 or older to be a poll worker in the state of New Jersey. And they get a day off from school to do that, an excused absence. And they get $300. So you've got a whole bunch of incentives there for them. So we train them to do the work of a poll worker that day, but tell them that if they're going to get paid, they have to go through a real training session. But when the kid gets to the poll worker, they hand them that ticket and the poll worker says, I'm sorry, but we have to stop the presses right now. Everybody needs to turn around and listen because I just had somebody come up to me who voted by mail. Or at least my records say that they voted by mail. And so I can't let them vote twice because in the United States, we only get 1 vote per person. So what does that person do? What should they do? And legitimately, the poll worker is supposed to say, here's a provisional ballot. But sometimes they forget. And sometimes the person gets so upset that they don't have the opportunity to do that. So let's talk about it. What should they do? And nobody knows. Nobody, not even the teachers, unless they happen to be poll workers themselves. So at any rate, then we explain what a provisional ballot is, how it's counted, so you don't have to worry that you're not going to be able to vote. You have that opportunity. And then we actually let them go ahead and vote in the machine anyway. But that wouldn't happen on the day if you really got a provisional ballot. And then the second person that comes up with, say, you're in the wrong district. So I'm sorry, we've got to stop and, this person can't vote. What should they do? Maybe one hand that goes like, get a provisional ballot. But sometimes you don't. If you give out a third ticket by the third time, everybody knows the answer to it. So it's a fun way to get the kids to understand that it is okay. You don't have to panic if you get told that you need to use a provisional ballot. And if you're not told, you should ask for one because you're allowed to do it that way. So it's very, very effective. The other thing we do is we ask a school security guard to come into the place where the voting machines are. And they're not allowed to be there in uniform. And so the kids get such a kick out of it when we kick them out. And then we give them the reason that, I think it was 1981, there were people who were intimidated. And we say, think about those people who have been released from jail because they were there on a felony. And now they're released and they can register again. And they go to vote for the first time and they walk in and they see a police officer there. What do you think is going to happen in their stomach? It's probably going to go right down to the ground. So police officers in uniform are not allowed in the polling place. They have to stay 100 feet outside. We also tell the kids they can't tell their peers who to vote for as they get up to the voting booth because that's called electioneering And you can't do that unless you're 100 feet outside the polling place. So they learn a lot during this experience and feel much more confident about voting, actually voting when they get to do it. Jean.
So Pat, do you use these slides with the kids when you're doing that election in the schools, or do you use it separately? Because I would want to use it separately without the election machines being there. So are there
You
like
mean
two different?
The Student Advocate Toolkit, do you use it
Yeah.
separately? Yes, you can use it separately. That's
Okay,
what we did initially.
and you're going to add the provisional ballots to that?
I'm going to do that. Yeah, I think that's an important thing to do. And, if you wanted to, you can take that slideshow, make a copy of it. All you have to do is go up to File and then make a copy. And you can add that yourself.
Okay.
You can hide slides yourself, whatever's not, like you saw that I had the primary slides hidden because they're not needed right now.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Well, I
Thank you.
really thank you for coming. I hope that you got something out of today and that you'll feel confident yourself in sharing one of those with somebody else. Susan, if you want to stay on a couple of seconds, I'll just go over the early stuff and thank the rest of you, and I'll see you again.
This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.